tonight, oh, also, I must say that this tonight is brought to you by the Fresno Poets Association, the Fresno Folklore Society, the KFCF, Fresno Free College Foundation. And I think the Alliance for the Arts is involved too. Tonight, as everybody knows, Ed Hirsch is going to be. And Ed comes from Chicago, born in 1950. He comes from, or was educated at Grinnell College, where he played All-American, what is it, tight end? Then University of Iowa, and then the University of Pennsylvania, where he got a PhD. He is the recipient of awards from the American Academy of Poets, the Ingram Merrill Foundation, the NEA, the Delmore Schwartz Memorial Award, and the 1987 National Book Critics Award in Poetry for the best book of poetry written by an American in 1986. He is a professor of English at the University of Houston and currently lives and is on leave traveling on a Guggenheim. Robert Ken Warren said of this poet last summer that he was the most interesting being written. His work was the most interesting being written by anyone, anywhere. And I've had a chance to read his poetry, and some of his poems are already favorites. His poems, it occurs to me, preserve the integrity of poetry at its best. Poems of clarity as well as inspiring intensification of vision. Very solid poems, and the kind of poems that turn out to be favorites. Poems of deep emotional understanding, resourcefulness, kindness, confidence of logic, and poems that cut a different path through time and history. And before I go on anymore, and there's more that I could say, let me just introduce Ed. I think everybody's ready to hear and to listen. Ed Hirsch.
Chuck. Want me to do my Tina Turner invitation? I was teaching at Wayne State University in Detroit. Some guy from a magazine came to interview me. He said, "What are the poetry centers in the United States?" So I said, "Well, New York and Fresno." He said, Fresno? I said, "Yeah, Fresno. Fresno's the Venice of American poetry." Philip Levine is there, Peter Everwine is there, there's that astonishing group of poets who come out of Fresno State. The guy is looking at me and says, "How long have you lived here in Detroit?" 5 years. Poor boy. So here I am in Venice. Well, maybe it's more like Rome to me now because I live in Houston. This is called Still Life and Argument. Listen, it only takes a moment to move, to knot ourselves together like the ends of a rope, longing to be knotted together. But let's avoid it. Let's wait. Ropes, even the sturdiest ropes, pull, they strain, struggle, eventually they break. But think of it. In a still life, a knife pauses above a platter of meat. It only takes a second, and poof, it becomes the idea of a knife. The drawing of a knife suspended in the air like a guillotine, about to weightlessly drop on the neck of a murderer and send him shrieking into oblivion forever. But it never happens. The knife keeps falling and falling, but never falls. That knife could be us. The milk on the table is always about to spill. The meat could be encased in wax paper to be protected from flies, but it's not. It's unnecessary. The flies threaten to descend on the exposed meat, but they can't. They're no longer flies, but a painting of flies. The blood pooled on the platter of meat never evaporates. It can't. Look, it's still there. And if I never touch you, well then, we never die. Listen, even lovers have still lives. Have whole months when they hang together like moths on an unlit light bulb, waiting for the bulb to light. But if it never does, then the moths survive. Meat should be allowed to sit on the table forever, without being devoured by flies. And if that's not possible, well then we still have this picture, the still life, not of how it will be, but of how it was, for the knife, and the meat, and the flies, and for us the night we hesitated together. From now on, love, we will always be about to destroy each other, always about to touch. Thank you. I never had applause before. One of the things that, when I first started writing poetry, the poems I read and that I came across and were taught to me were almost entirely rural. And I love those poems. But my experience was almost completely urban. And so when I first started writing, I've had an experience that I've seen lots of writers reproduce, and that's that we try and write rural poems, because that's what we thought poetry had to be. And it suddenly occurred to me late, because I'm a bit dense, that maybe poetry could be expanded to write about urban experience. That's been one of the things that I care about. I know lots of people here care about, to expand poetry so that it can accommodate the kinds of experiences and the kinds of people that we encounter. Really, this is a justification for coming from a really ugly place, right? The ugliest place I know is Chester, Pennsylvania. I identified with it completely when I went there. And I wrote a poem about it. It's called How to Get Back to Chester. I remember the greasy moon floating like a tire over the highway. The last stars flecked like dust on the window of my father's garage. For years I've walked away from the concrete fields of a lousy childhood, the damp haze of life in Chester. But now I've come back to follow the moon through the toothed stacks of chimneys, through the back alleys lit up by shabby yellow lanterns. I've come to stand like a pilgrim before the tin shacks, holding their tin ears on the highway, while trucks roar by without stopping, and factories clack their fat tongues together and win. I've come here to listen to strangers talk about football, to waitresses talk about strangers. I've come to see myself taking the deep blast from an old furnace. Not much has changed here, and not much is left of childhood either. If you want to get back to Chester, you have to listen. You have to stand like a penitent in your bare feet and feel the air darken before a storm. You have to stare at the one viney plant waving on the family porch until you feel your father's browny palm gripping your hand, until you finally taste the words at the back of your own mouth saying, "Don't come back, son, and welcome." Do you mind if I just get undressed? Linda said not to take it personally if she started kneeling while I was reading. I didn't really want to get paid. I'm no longer really an urban poet because yesterday Franny Levine got me to plant a lemon tree in the backyard. Linda, how would you feel like after feel I have to use a microphone?
Yeah.
It sort of sucks, this microphone. It keeps talking back to me. Microphone should be seen and not heard. This is a poem about basketball, and it's also a memorial poem to a very dear friend of mine named Dennis Turner, who taught with me at Wayne and who died of liver cancer. Dennis was a very devoted basketball fan. He used to describe pro teams by how many players they had who had played high school in New York City. So he'd say Portland is really great this year. They have 3 players who played, 2 in Queens and 1 in Brooklyn. Anyway, Dennis. Fast break in memory of Dennis Turner, 1946 to 1984. A hook shot kisses the rim and hangs there, helplessly, but doesn't drop. And for once our gangly starting center boxes out his man and times his jump perfectly, gathering the orange leather from the air like a cherished possession, and spinning around to throw a strike to the outlet, who was already shoveling an underhand pass toward the other guard, scissoring past a flat-footed defender who looked stunned and nailed to the floor in the wrong direction, trying to catch sight of a high gliding dribble, and a man letting the play develop in front of him in slow motion, almost exactly like a coach's drawing on the blackboard. Both forwards racing down the court the way the forwards should, fanning out and filling the lanes in tandem, moving together as brothers, passing the ball between them without a dribble, without a single bounce hitting the hardwood, until the guard finally lunges out and commits to the wrong man, while the power forward explodes past them in a fury, taking the ball into the air by himself now, and laying it gently against the glass for a layup, but losing his balance in the process, inexplicably falling, hitting the floor with a wild, headlong motion for the game he loved like a country, and swiveling back to see an orange blur floating perfectly through the net. It won't hurt my feelings if you don't clap after every poem. Because after a while, the poems are like, you're probably too young to remember this. Remember Queen for a Day? The poems are like the women in Queen for a Day. Which is more pathetic? That one wins the lawyer. That one wins the free washroom. People are sobbing. I love that show. I thought it was an external correlative to our family life. This is called My Father's Back. There's an early memory that I carry around in my mind like an old photograph in my wallet, a little graying and faded, a picture that I don't much like, but nonetheless keep, fingering it now and then like a sore tooth, knowing it's there, not needing to see it anymore. The sun slants down on the shingled roof, the wind breathes in the needled pines, and I'm lying in the grass on my 3rd birthday, red-faced and watchful, but not squalling yet, not yet rashed or hived up from eating the wrong food or touching the wrong plant, my father's leaving. A moment before, he was holding me up like a new trophy, and I was a toddler with my face in the clouds, spinning around with a head full of stars, getting so dizzy. A moment before, I was squealing with joy in the tilt-a-whirl of his arms, drifting asleep in the cavern of his chest. I remember waking up to the twin peaks of his shoulders moving away, a shirt clinging to his massive body, a mountain receding. I remember the giant distance between us, a drop or two of rain, the sheen on the lawn, and then I was sitting up in the grainy half-light of a man walking away from his family. I don't know why we go over the old hurts again and again in our minds, the false starts and true beginnings of a world we call the past, as if it could tell us who we are now, or were, or might have been. It's drizzling. A car door slams, just once, and he's gone. Tiny pools of water glisten on the street. My cousin from Poland is waiting in the wings. We haven't seen each other in 30 years. Sorry, that was just doing little numbers from the show that go through my mind. This is a poem in honor of my high school football coach. It's called Execution. The last time I saw my high school football coach, he had cancer stenciled into his face like pencil marks from the sun, like intricate drawings on a chalkboard, small X's and O's that he copied down in a neat numerical hand before practice in the morning. By day's end, the board was a spider web of options and counters, blasts and sweeps, a constellation of players shining under his favorite word, execution, underlined in the upper right-hand corner of things. He believed in football like a new religion and had perfect, unquestioning faith in the fundamentals of blocking and tackling, the idea of warfare without suffering or death, the concept of teammates moving in harmony like the planets. And yet our awkward adolescent bodies were always canceling the flawless beauty of Saturday afternoons in September, falling away from the particular grace of autumn, the clear weather, the ideal game he imagined. And so he drove us through punishing drills on weekday afternoons, and doubled our practice time, and challenged us to hammer him with forearms, and devise elaborate last-second plays, a flea flicker, a triple reverse, to save us from defeat. Almost always they worked. He despised losing and loved winning more than his own body, maybe even more than himself. But the last time I saw him, he looked wobbly and stunned by illness. And I remembered the game in my senior year, when we met a downstate team who loved hitting more than we did, who battered us all afternoon with a vengeance, who destroyed us with timing and power, with deadly and personal authority, machine-like fury, perfect execution. Pusty. At times it seems lucky and unexpected, the past, and who we were then, and what the mind brings back on an overcast day in late September, the dense evanescent clouds shifting overhead, the wind fingering the branches and the live oaks, the little chunks of our childhood selves floating to the surface after all these years, like memories that we imagined, or tiny bits of metal constellating on magnets. One moment we were drinking coffee at the window, on a wet day falling around us. The next moment we were putting our heads down on our desks for story time, or cleaning our lockers, or filing into the schoolyard for a fire drill. Soon we are pulling on sleek yellow slickers, splashing home in the rain to our parents and grandparents. I see a boy throwing his arms around his grandmother's neck and hugging her. He eats sugar cookies that he dunks in milk and plays in his room by himself now, happily, in a fort that he's built next to his bed. Sometimes it's enough just to remember There was once a time, before we knew about time, when the self and the world fit snugly together. And this is called In the Underground Garage. I pulled my mother's baby blue Thunderbird into a parking garage on the corner of Michigan and Lake on a late afternoon in mid-December. One of those slushy Chicago dusts when the air thickens around the Christmas lights strung through the evergreens that line the sidewalks. And the diligent rush hour traffic creeps along the lakeside as if in obedience to a secret commandment, and the shoppers sift through the fog. The car hummed on the downward spiraling ramp and glided to a halt in front of a booth where a familiar-looking attendant in uniform, I didn't recognize him at first, threw open a steel door and became my closest friend from high school, turning away in embarrassment. In a moment, we were in each other's arms, hugging, frozen, but he wouldn't say a word, and already the cars were piling up behind us, a row of impatience. He held the keys to my mother's car and shifted his weight back on his heels, half in anger, half in disappointment, as I saw him do on the sidelines against Maine South, a linebacker's helmet imprinted on my back. For an instant, I can see us putting our heads together in Jake's diner over the memory of kisses from Marcia and Betty Ann, or driving into Niles Township for a beer run in his father's Pete Green Nova. We were working side by side in the old factory buried below Monroe Street, taking orders from the foreman on the second floor and stacking cartons on top of heavy wooden skids. But he didn't want to remember the past before our futures divided, before whatever was going to happen between us had already happened. The honking began in earnest, and the cars formed a snake-like line curving up to the street like souls in purgatory. I thought of his father's labor on the corrugator and the printing press, the years his mother worked the night shift at Billings Container. But before I could ask about them, my friend slammed the door and screeched away in the glistening blue car of privilege. In silence, he left me, staring after him through the fog and steam rising from the grated vents, at the buttresses of concrete dividers, the spaces misting between us, the cars rolling into the underground depths at nightfall, filled with ghosts and strangers. After I saw this guy, my friend Michael Grabowski, I was so stunned by this experience. My sisters, about 2 years later, invited him to come to a book party that I had. So he comes to the book party. First there's a book party, at a bookstore, then we go back to my sister's house. So Michael's there, he says, "How much are your royalties on this book?" I said, "Well, $1.50 on the hardback. Why do you want to know?" He said, "I stole the book." So he gives me the $1.50. He doesn't want to cheat me. And then, one of my sisters, a lawyer, I'm meeting all of her lawyer friends who are coming up, and I hadn't signed their books in the bookstore, so I'm signing them over there, and they're saying the most astonishing things to me. Like, a woman comes up, I've never seen her before, and she says, "Remember the time you tried to get Elaine Siegel's bra off in the back of Michael Grabowski's car?" Then I see Michael's in the back of this line, and he keeps telling each person another incredible story. One humiliating thing after the other. This is called the Skokie Theater. 12 years old and lovesick, bumbling and terrified for the first time in my life, but strangely hopeful too, and stunned, definitely stunned. I wanted to cry. I almost started to sob when Chris Klein actually touched me, oh God, below the belt, in the back row of the Skokie Theater. Our knees bumped helplessly. Our mouths were glued together like flypaper. Our lips were grinding in a hysterical grimace, while the most handsome man in the world twitched his hips on the flickering screen and the girls began to scream in the dark. I didn't know one thing about the body yet, about the deep foam filling my bones, but I wanted to cry out in desolation when she touched me again, when the lights flooded on in the crowded theater and the other kids started to file into the narrow aisles, into a lobby of faded purple splendor, into the last Saturday in August before she moved away. I never wanted to move again, but suddenly we were being lifted toward the sidewalk in a crush of bodies, blinking, shy, unprepared for the ringing familiar voices and the harsh glare of sunlight, the brightness of an afternoon that left us gripping each other's hands, trembling and changed. My mother got wild gratitude. And of course, she started looking through it, looking for data, not to read poems. She found that poem about the Skokie Theater. It seems to interest people what your mother would think about such a poem. She thought it was a scandal. She said, what happens if Chris Klein reads that poem? So I said, well, Mom, I think that's pretty unlikely because Chris Klein dropped out of high school when we were freshmen. She said, yeah, well, there's still continuing education. And then every now and then I call up and she said, I talked to Chris Klein last week. She didn't like it. This is called my grandmother's bed. How she pulled it out of the wall to my amazement. How it rattled and creaked. How it sagged in the middle and smelled like a used clothing store. I was ecstatic to be sleeping on wheels. It rolled when I moved. It trembled when she climbed under the covers in her flannel nightgown, kissing me softly on the head, turning her back. Soon I could hear her snoring next to me, her clogged breath roaring in my ears, filling her tiny apartment like the ocean, until I too finally swayed and slept, while a radiator hissed in the corner, and traffic droned down Lawrence Avenue. I woke up to the color of light pouring through the windows, the odor of soup simmering in the kitchen, my grandmother's face. It felt good to be ashore again, after sleeping on rocky, unfamiliar waves. I loved to help her straighten the sheets and lift the Murphy back into the wall. It was like putting the night away when we closed the wooden doors again and her bed disappeared without a trace. In 1969, I was a freshman in college. You may remember that at that time in America, abortions were everywhere illegal. Someone would turn us to that. This is called the Abortion 1969. I swore I'd always remember that dingy hotel room in downtown Detroit where the doctor came with his gleaming metallic instruments to carve a newly forming body out of your body for $500 in small bills paid in cash. I swore I'd never forget the exact pressure of your hand in mine as he prodded open your legs with a surgical knife under a tent of white sheets while his girlfriend fiddled with the radio and lounged against the door in her spiked heels. Afterwards, I remembered 3 shades of blood staining the bed sheets, how the doctor sudsed his hands carefully in the sink, turning them over twice in the bathroom light. I remembered the door shutting behind them, the sound of heels clicking in the hallway as an elevator rang in the distance, and I stared into your ashen face. That night I believed your heavy narcotic sleep would never end. I cradled your face in my palms like a fragile sculpture and wiped your dampening forehead with a cool washcloth. It wasn't enough. Nothing helped but rest, your body already trying to knit up the emptiness. I can still feel the relief of that next morning, when you woke up with a surprised moan and a pained smile on your face, when I saw the fresh light crystallizing on your body, as if an angel had sprung back to life. It's touching to remember us in the early morning light, 2 teenagers holding hands on a narrow bed, a boy and a girl not knowing what they've done, murderous children lying together in innocence, and electric joy passing back and forth between them. That was before we told your parents about it, before we discovered you had never been pregnant, before the doctor was arrested in a dank hotel room with a young assistant at his side. That was before you turned to me, years later, in the rain, in a different city, almost apologizing after so much had gone wrong between us, saying, "I'll never forgive you. Nothing is forgiven." This poem is called 3 Journeys. One of the journeys will be clear, it's my own. One of the journeys is the journey of a homeless woman as she walks around the streets of Detroit, where I lived for many years. And the 3rd journey is John Clare's escape from a mental hospital. John Clare is a 19th century poet that I admire tremendously, and he spent a lot of his adult life in a mental hospital, and once he escaped from the hospital, he went home and he wrote an extraordinary lucid account of his journey called The Journey Out of Essex. And my account of that journey comes from his. 3 journeys. Whoever has followed the bag lady on her terrible journey past Food Lane Supermarket and Maze's Records and the little flowering barber shop on the southeast corner of Woodward and Euclid will know what it meant for John Clare to walk 80 miles across pocked and jutted roads to Northborough, hungry, shy of strangers, foot-founded and broken down after escaping from the High Beach Asylum near Epping Forest. And whoever has followed the bag lady on her studious round of littered stairwells and dead-end alleys, and watched her combing the blue and white city garbage cans for empties, and admired the way that she can always pick out the single plate earring and 1 Canadian dime from a million splinters of glass in a phone booth, will know how John Clare must have looked as he tried to follow the route that a gypsy had pointed out for him, scaling the high palings that stood in his way, bruising his feet on the small stones, stooping to admire the pileworts and cowslips, scorning the self-centered cuckoos, but knowing the sweet kinship of a landrail hiding in the hedgerows. I began this morning by standing in front of the New World Church's ruined storefront. I was listening to the bag lady and a pimply-faced old drunk trading secrets with the vent man, and remembering how a gentleman on horseback had mistaken John Clare for a broken-down haymaker and tossed him a penny for a half pint of beer. I remembered how grateful he was to stand elbow to elbow in the old ploughed public house, happily sheltered from a sudden rainfall. But later, when I saw the bag lady sprawled down on a steaming bank for warmth, I remember how Claire had moved on, crippled by tiny bits of gravel lodged in his shoes, and how he tried to escape from the harsh wind by lying down in an open dike bottom, but was soaked through clear to his bones. How he came to the heavy wooden doors of the Wild Man public house hours later, and gazed longingly at the brightly lit windows, and had no money, and passed on. Whoever has stood alone in the night's deep shadows, listening to laughter coming from a well-lit house, will know that John Clare's loneliness was unbending. And whoever has felt that same unbending loneliness will also know what an old woman felt today as she followed an obedient path between the huge green garbage cans behind Kroger's supermarket and the small silver ones behind Clarence's grocery. I began this day by following a bag lady in honor of John Clare. But suddenly, tonight, I was reading The Journey Out of Essex, 1841, in honor of the unknown bag lady. I had witnessed a single day in her life, and was trying hard not to judge myself, and judging myself anyway. I remember how she stooped to rub her foot, how she smiled a small, toothful grin when she discovered a half-eaten apple, how she talked on endlessly to herself and fell asleep leaning against a broken wall in an abandoned wooden shed on 2nd Avenue. Tonight, when I lie down in the dark in my own bed, I want to remember that John Clare was so desperately hungry after 3 days and nights without food that he finally knelt down, as if in prayer, and ate the soft grass of the earth, and thought it tasted like fresh bread, and judged no one, not even himself, and slept peacefully again, like a child. Never in my life have I seen such a look of terror as I saw tonight on Phil and Franny Levine's face when I told them that I liked Fresno and that I wanted to stay on and live with them. I now know that I can induce it at will. I mean, they look stricken. And then, I'd never really seen Phil cry before. This is called recovery. It was as if the rain could feel itself falling through the air today, as if the air could actually feel its own dampness. The breeze could hear a familiar voice explaining the emptiness to the dark elms that swayed unconsciously along the wet road, the elms that could still feel their own branches glistening with rain. It was as if the sky had imagined a morning of indigos and pinks, mauves and reddish browns. The smiling young nurse who helped you into the car was wearing 2 colorful ribbons in her auburn hair, and somehow they looked precisely like ribbons gleaming in the hair of a woman helping you into a car. I believe I had never seen ribbons before. And suddenly I was staring at asphalt puddled with rainwater, and bluish letters purpling on a white sign, and sliding electric entrances and exits, and statues bristling with color. The yellow sunlight filtered through the clouds, and I believe I had never seen a street lamp shimmer across a wavy puddle before. The road home was slick with lights, and everything seemed to be crying, just this, nothing more, nothing else, as if the morning were somehow conscious of itself. When you leaned over and touched me on the arm, it was as if my arm needed to be touched, in that way, at exactly that time. If it's okay with you, I'd like to read 2 more poems. At the end, I'll be just saying, no, really, 1 more poem. Everyone will be sneaking out. Just me hanging. Well, maybe I'll read 32 more poems. 2 more poems, each one is 10,000 lines. This is called Skyrim. It takes place at a hospital in Detroit, Harper Grace Hospital, July 15th, 1984. Through the west window, I could see a fractured moon installed in the smokestacks behind the spiked pines, almost full, frail in the half-rain, half-mist of a midsummer twilight that lingered for a long time on the slanted roofs and died on the black top of the river. All afternoon my friend slept, his breathing labored, dogged, intense. As the colors seeped visibly out of the air-conditioned air, a steady sifting of purples and blues, bloodless oranges and pinks, while darkness thickened on the white walls and shadows crept like a judgment across the floor. It's hard to bring back the slow terror of that afternoon in a sterile place. My friend's dream of health, drifting further and further away from his body, almost palpable in the cool air, a cloud above his head, the breath stuttering in his lungs. For me, it was like being called to the window to see our 2 bodies in the rainy light of a darkness falling. The faint bluish-white twins of Gemini rising and splitting apart. A barge pulling a single star over the swelling, accidental faces of trees. Forgive me. That night I saw living and dying in everything, even in long bands of light climbing out of the water. One rainbow penetrating the night sky, while a second one arched over its spectral head. The bodies luminous and doubled, their colors reversed. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure to read here. My suitcases are just outside. My books are being mailed to me. This last poem is called Dawn Walk. Some nights when you're asleep, deep under the covers, far away, slowly curling yourself back into a childhood no one living will ever remember, now that your parents touch hands under the ground, as they always did upstairs in the master bedroom, only more distant now, deaf to the nightmares, the small cries that no longer startle me awake, but still terrify me, so that I do get up some nights, restless and anxious to walk through the first trembling blue light of dawn in a calm snowfall. It's soothing to see the houses asleep in their own large bodies, the dreamless fences, the courtyards unscarred by human footprints. The huge clock folding its hands in the forehead of the skyscraper looming downtown. In the park, the benches are layered in white. The statue out of history is an outline of blue snow. Cars, too, are rimmed and motionless under a thin blanket, smoothed down by the smooth maternal palm of the wind. So thanks to the blue morning, to the blue spirit of winter, to the soothing blue gift of powdered snow. And soon a few scattered lights come on in the houses. A motor coughs and starts up in the distance. Smoke raises its arms over the chimneys. Soon the trees suck in the darkness and breathe out the light, while black drapes open in silence. And as I turn home, where I know you are already awake, wandering slowly through the house, searching for me, I can suddenly hear my own footsteps crunching the simple, astonishing news that we are here. Yes, we are still here. Thank you.